Welcome to the Bobby O Show. My name is Bob Opatzner, and today will mark several firsts on the Bobby O Show, even though it's show number 121. As a Jew, if there's a first time you do something, there's a shachianu, you say. I'm not going to do that on the show today, but there's a lot of firsts today. One first I have today is I'm doing two shows in one day. The second show will be about two high school students from Danbury High School who have been admitted to military academies. That will be done today as a second show. Reason for that is because they're leaving for their commitments very soon. The second first today is I'm doing a show with three remote people who are in New York State and me sitting in the studio of Comcast in Danbury, Connecticut. That's the second first. The third first is, most of you know I'm a litigator and attorney for over 40 years, and I've done a great deal of cases, great number of cases in divorce work, probably between 750 and more in my career, but today I'm going to have a first for me. That first is we're going to have three people, two of whom were married, got divorced. That would be my client, my friend Michele Phillips, who's on for her 13th appearance on my show. That would be her and her ex-husband, Stephen Phillips, who's on the show today. We also have Gary Wads, who is Michele's current husband, who she calls my forever husband. So we're going to talk about how these three wonderful people, the ex-husband, the forever husband, and I call Michele the glue, how they have managed to become three people who are best of friends. Can you believe that? Three people, divorced, remarried, whatever, and they're the best of friends. So rather than hear me from now on the rest of the show, I'm going to speak minimally if possible, and Michele saying, yeah, right. And we're going to have these people talk about how it is they got to the point of being divorced, then becoming best of friends. And this might be a lesson to many of you who are, in fact, having some marital difficulties. Let's introduce the gang. Gang, can I see you all, please? Guess who the lady in yellow is? Your name is?
Michele Phillips, happy to be here, Bobby O.
Thank you. The gentleman in the glasses, your name is?
Steve Phillips, glad to be here, Bobby O.
That's the ex-husband. And the gentleman who's last but not least with the British accent is?
Gary Wads.
Welcome all of you. Welcome all of you. And by the way, you'll see that I have in my screen two books, both of which were written by Michele Phillips. We've discussed at length in my shows. Michele said before the show, what are those yellow stickies that you see in the book? It's because I read the book so frequently, I highlight the key points. In fact, sometimes when I ask Michele questions, I remember passages better than she does. And behind Michele are the same two books, right, Michele?
Yes, they are.
I'm going to ask
you. Keep them on display, and they're available for sale also.
That's right, although we can't talk about the sale today, but we all know how to get that book if we want. Michele, I want to start with you. Tell me a little bit about your background, even though people who have seen my show know about you, but just a little bit of background of who you are, what you do, but not about the divorce and marriage situation. We'll get to that in a moment, and then we'll do the gentleman thereafter. Michele, take it away. Take one.
Thank you, Bobby, for having me on 13 times. It's lucky 13, so thank you for having me on your show. I have been for the past 25 to 30 years, I work in Fortune 100 and 500 companies, and I teach positive psychology, emotional intelligence, leadership, and I do coaching and workshops. I'm an author, a speaker, a keynoter, and that's really me in a nutshell. My passion is helping people access their power, and I like to say live happily in the world no matter what's going on.
And also, she has a very important common experience with me, and that is we both have a birthday on November 5th.
Yes.
And I know that to be true because when she told me that, I made her bring out her driver's license to prove she was born November 5th.
Yes.
That's another story we'll get to another time. Gary Wads, you are known as the forever husband. Would you please tell us a little about yourself?
I'm Gary Wads. I met Michele in 2010. We were married in 2013, and I've lived in America since 2014.
And I first met Gary in person when Michele's second book, Energize Your Happiness, had her open house in West Hampton, New York, and we had a great conversation for about 45 minutes. Gary's a wonderful guy. And I think Michele just seconded that motion. Stephen Phillips. I see guitars in the
I third it.
background. What's this? You're not related to Michele Phillips, the singer, are you?
No, but I do have a Michele Phillips signed guitar back here.
Really? The real Michele Phillips
do.
or the one who sang?
No, the real Michele. Yeah, the real Michele Phillips. I
The real
have a
Michele Phillips is
signature
wearing,
Singer.
that's right, is wearing a yellow dress today. Stephen?
No,
what
the
about-
singer. He's not one from Mamas and Papas, Michele Phillips.
No, I knew that. Mama Cass
Okay.
Elliott, just stay away from
Yes.
ham sandwiches. Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah.
Who are you?
I'm Steve Phillips. I am the former husband of Michele Phillips, and now I just spend my days hiking and playing guitar and taking pictures.
You know, when Michele told me that her ex-husband's name was Steve Phillips, I thought she was referring to the general manager or former general manager of the New York Mets. But you're
Yeah.
not that Steve Phillips, correct?
No. As a matter of fact, when he was getting fired, everybody would post the headlines on my office. So Steve Phillips fired. So yeah, they were nice joke.
Nice joke, that's correct. Michele knows I have a very dry sense of humor. I'm going to go work backwards in how I present the show. And by the way, another first is I have no notes on my notepad, although I did write your names down in case I forgot your name. Put my name down too, just in case I forgot my name. Michele, I first learned about, well, you have a podcast. You didn't mention your podcast, which is called, what is your podcast called, please? I don't want to.
Write Your Outcome.
Write Your Outcome. And she's had a first series, and she is just starting a second series on June 4th. I've listened to many of her shows while I do my 4-mile walk daily in Richfield. And I heard her show that she was advertising, saying she's going to do a show with her ex-husband and her forever husband. And I said, there's no way, being a divorce attorney, I know that people in the divorce process, it's a very rough time. And other than health issues, and sometimes they're combined, there's a very difficult part of people's lives when they go through a divorce. Every state's laws are different. I'm licensed in Connecticut, was formerly licensed in New York, but I just did it for a particular client. But I never practiced divorce work in New York State. But in Connecticut, I'm sure what I said is true for out of the states. It's very difficult. So Michele, I heard your final podcast of year number 1, which was better than Sopranos' final TV show, much better than Sopranos' final. Tell me why it is you decided to do a podcast, which was excellent, about that topic.
The reason being is when Stephen and I were going through our divorce, it was very painful, and nobody gets married thinking they're going to get divorced. But yet, somewhere in my heart, I knew that we loved each other enough to get married, so that we should, I called it back then a spiritual divorce. I didn't even know what I was saying, but I thought if we loved each other enough to get married, we came together for soul reasons. And for whatever reasons, our souls, our lives were going in different directions. We're not bad people. We just weren't good for each other at that time. So I thought, I want us to part and still be friends or still be civil to each other. I did not know it was going to grow into this friendship with myself, Gary, and Stephen at the time. I just wanted it to be peaceful and civil. And you hear all these horrible stories about people going to court and losing money and fighting for years. And I thought, I want something peaceful. I want us to be able to look each other in the eye, decide what we want, and then move on. And while I didn't know how that was going to happen, I think what happened was the seed was planted. And I stand here before you. This took a long time. We didn't just wave a wand and everybody got along. It was painful, but with that goal in mind, if I go back to my podcast, it's called Write Your Outcome. I'm a big believer in, you might not have written the beginning of your story, but you get to write the outcome. You get to write how the story goes. So I knew I still wanted a relationship with Stephen, with his family, him with my family. And again, I didn't know how we were going to get there, but we were writing our outcome together.
You know, I'm going to do a pun. You said you did not wave a wand, but you may have waved Wanda.
Yes.
And that will come into the story a little bit later on. You guys have a triangle. I'd like to say that Bobby O makes it a rectangle because
Okay.
I actually met Michele at an airport in around 2011-12. We can't really pin the exact time frame, but it was a time when I was in the airport and I met Michele and we just started talking and our flights were delayed. We were on the same plane. We probably spent 5 hours talking and it went like in 5 seconds. But I can remember vividly that Michele was in pain. And she didn't really know me very well, but I think like within 2 minutes we knew that we could trust each other, and we've been, since then, so that's 13, 14 years. And I remember you were having pain because, not the details I don't remember, but I remember that you were talking about your divorce was difficult, and you also had met Gary around that time frame. So it was a lot of things going on, and to go from there to here is very interesting. We're going to get into that a little bit more. Stephen, tell me around that time. Well, first of all, when did you meet Michele and how'd you meet her?
Gosh, I want to say it was in the 80s, late 80s, and we were doing a project in Rockland County, and she was working at a deli. So I would go there, and she took, ordered my sandwiches and whatnot, and we just hit it off.
Rumor has it that you went to the deli so often you gained 15 pounds just buying sandwiches just so you could see Michele. I'm teasing about that. So
Yeah, it was 30, but that's okay.
Well, I'm sure Michele didn't cook the food. I'm sure she just served it for you, but that's another story. And so you guys got married. When was that? You better get this answer right, Stephen. When did you get married? Do you remember?
92.
92. That's pretty close. You got the right century anyway.
So we met,
1992.
and I was in college. So in college, I worked in an Italian deli while I went to college on the weekends, and Stephen was a customer, and we dated for 7 years, I believe, or something like that before we got married. Yeah.
7 years.
Well,
Wow.
that's a whole other episode, Bobby.
No. No, that's going to be our next phone call to Michele, but that's another 7 years. Okay. I've heard the 7 year itch, but not the 7 year. Okay. Now, we're going to come back to you, Stephen. Gary, how and when did you meet? And I know some of these answers to these questions. I'm asking for the audience to build up to get to understand the situation. Gary, how did you meet Michele?
I was skiing in Vail, Colorado in 2010. We'd had a good day skiing, and I met Michele after skiing in a bar.
You didn't knock her off. You didn't knock her off the slope accidentally to meet her, did you?
No.
Okay. Did you meet?
We never actually went skiing together. At that time we met. We never actually met.
Was it love at first sight?
Kind of.
Kind of.
For me,
Michele said it took her 14 years, but that's Michele, was it love at first sight for Gary and you?
It was for him versus, it took me a little longer, but we're all there now.
Very good. Thank
you
you
needed
very
some
much.
convincing.
When I heard the podcast, the one thing I said to Michele is, Michele in the podcast is the hostess, got to ask all the questions. I said, in my show, I'm going to ask some tough questions of Michele because, in fact, I'm going to let the guys ask some tough questions too, because I want it to be fair so that we get both sides of the angle. So let's go back now to Stephen, you and Michele, and I have only met you once on our prep show and today, but you seem like a really nice guy. And Michele is terrific, the light lady, as they call her. Tell me the issues that you had to get over when the divorce happened. And my experience as a divorce lawyer is, except for when you have really bad abuse or really bad alcohol or drug usage, there's usually a little bit of fault to each side. Connecticut has what they call no-fault divorce, so you don't really have to get into the fault. You can, but you don't really. Can you tell me an issue or two that you saw developing during the marriage, Stephen, that caused you some issues that meant that when the divorce happened, there were some difficult times? Can you understand the question? If so, can you identify that? Because that would help me understand how you then went off the roller coaster into a great relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I
honestly,
understand the question.
The question is, let's suppose there were one or two things about himself that he thought contributed to the breakdown of your marriage to him. And
And
if
Bobby, I
those,
guess I don't want to hijack, but I'm going to. I think I would like us to focus on how we became friends and went forward. I really don't want to dig up past hurts and pains between us.
well, I was only raising that because I
Yeah.
thought those might be issues that were problems in becoming friends. But I'm going to let Stephen answer whatever he wants to. And even though you're the attorney for Stephen, I'm going to overrule your objection. Your objection is noted. I'll tell you, I'm an attorney, aren't I? I'm actually doing judgeships too. So I'm going to, your objection is a very fair one, but I think if you saw where I was going, it wasn't to raise those issues, it was to see where things were, to see how you took your medications and got better. So objection overruled. Stephen, you can answer the question the best you can, and Michele, thank you.
Okay.
I knew it was going to be a
Good
hell
one.
of a show.
Okay.
I knew it was going to be, and you know, Michele, when you were making the objection, Stephen was laughing. Go ahead, Stephen.
Right. No, it's fine because there are definitely triggers. You know, we had a great marriage. We did a lot of stuff together, and but certain things, certain events happen, you know, in life, and it tips the scales, so to speak. My whole thing was I would I really got into my job. I spent a lot of time away from home, um, just to keep my mind straight. But yeah, there were things that sort of tipped the scales, and it took a while to um, get everything back. This wasn't a journey that you make overnight. Um, it's yeah, it took a lot of um, reflecting on
Self-analysis, a lot of
self
self-analysis, a lot of
a lot of
self-analysis, perhaps.
self-reflection, self-analysis. Um, but you know what? I don't know how I did it, but we're here,
If,
and we can
if,
talk
if,
about that now.
if you read Michele's books, which I have, I
Hmm.
can't quote Michele the exact words you use, but I'm going to say the best I can. Perhaps you might help me. And that is that you can't be your best for someone else unless your best self that you can be. Michele, what are the words that you use to say that? You say it better than I do.
I'm not sure, but um, it's really, I always say everything is a mirror. So whatever you're going through is something that you need to learn from. So as Steven said, like we had a lot of things that took us off course. And I think it took for some reason, the 3 year mark stands in my head. It took us 3 years to get back on track. So I don't want to fool anyone into thinking like, this was easy. But because we had the goal of staying on track, it was gradual and we were always professional or polite. What's the word? We were never rude. We were always respectful.
Amicable,
That's the word I'm looking for.
amicable,
We're always
respectful.
amiable. We were always respectful. We cared about each other's boundaries. So while we were in pain and we would sometimes get together and fight, and then we would cry or whatever, and then we would go apart and then we would get together. So over time, that's the one thing I say, time doesn't heal all wounds, but what you do with the time. So if you work on yourself, if you look at what's coming up for you and take responsibility, then you can, as I said, I feel like Steve and I were able to move forward and get, we went through the pain, but we kept the love.
And you're all three good people, and that makes a big difference too. And I mean, I've had cases, unfortunately, where people call me the bodyguard. You know, you have a situation where someone feels like they've been emotionally abused, for example, which can be worse than physical abuse. You know, and I've had shows about something called coercive control, which is not your situation, but where one spouse is coercive over the other spouse, and it makes it difficult. Now, Gary, you came into the picture um, while Michele was going through her difficult times with her divorce. I would presume that you were helpful to Michele in some ways to help her be her real self as opposed to the person involved in the difficult process. Did you contribute in any way to try to help soothe her, which I think would probably help have made this a triangle? Did you feel like you were trying to help her in some ways in your own way to help relieve the tension between the two of them?
Well, good question. We were still dating from two different countries, so every time we met, we were always happy to see each other. So I never seen any pain in Michelle. So it never occurred to me that she was going through a hard time. So,
Yeah. And
um,
Michelle,
And if I could
I know.
add, Bobby, by the
thank you.
time I met Gary, I was through it. So it was,
That's a good timeline. But also, it's my understanding that when Michelle, and Stephen lived in close proximity in terms of towns, and as I recall from our discussions, you both took steps to be respectful. This is really important. Both being respectful. I've had situations in cases I've had where somebody intentionally would go where they knew the other spouse would be, just to, you didn't do that. You guys were very, very, both you and Stephen were good about that. Can you talk about that? Because to me, that respectfulness would contribute a lot. Stephen, I'm going to ask Michelle first. Go ahead, Michelle. How did you guys try to, quote, avoid each other, unquote, when you were dating other people?
well, first of all, we lived in the town over, as Steven said on the podcast. When I started even dating before I met Gary, I dated in other counties. I would never bring someone that I was dating to a restaurant where I know I might run into Steve. So I just think we were disrespectful. And if I did see him, I would, because sometimes we have friends at parties, like, should I invite Steve? Should I invite Michelle? And it's like, yes, I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable if we might feel uncomfortable. But I think we just really made the effort to stay civil, to stay respectful, and to also honor the boundaries. So, and again, by the time I did meet Gary, enough years have passed. So it was almost, it was easier.
Although some people would say that no matter how much time passes, it's not easy. So
I know people that are mad at their spouse for 10 years. They're married to their second spouse longer than they were married to the first spouse, and they're
and
still
they're still
fighting.
mad at, and I have a theory that if you love someone, your heart always reserves a spot for that person somewhat, and it makes it difficult. Stephen, tell me from your end of the angle how you tried to show respectfulness by how you dated or how you interacted with Michelle, to be sensitive to her. She's an emotional young lady. I'm Jewish, she's Italian. We're all Italians and Jews, we're all emotional, right, Michelle? So how did you try to be respectful to her, which I think led to the triangle being where it is today?
I mean, I don't think it takes rocket science to figure out that you're going through a divorce, you still care for the person you were married to. Um, what it would feel like if they saw you with somebody else. Meanwhile, they still had feelings for you. I just knew it wouldn't be good. So I mean, I think if I at the time when we were fresh going through it, if I would have saw her with somebody else, I mean, you're gonna be pissed. And so we were able to set a boundary or set grounds that never happened. So
Right.
I think with this background of, and that's what I was getting to, Michelle, is the background where you are. Now I want to get to the upswing in the roller coaster, where you guys are much, well, you're a triangle. I've rarely seen this. Michelle, tell me, was there a point in time that you realized that, you know what, we can all three be friends? And I know there's some stories about Gary and Stephen doing some work together, but was it before that point in time? When did you first realize that, you know what, we can really be
And
all happy together?
I have to be honest. So we didn't plan this. So oops, I'm losing my headphone. I did plan to be, I didn't want to not be friends with Steven anymore, right? I knew Steven was going to be in my life and his family, and I did not want to write that off. So what I know now, looking back, is that both of them are very confident in who they are. And because they're confident in who they are, and because everything's done in the open, there's no, two of us, everything's always on speakerphone. If I'm walking the room and I'm on the phone with Steve, or Gary's on the phone with Steve, or whatever, there's no secrets there. And what happened was, and it's kind of a silly story, it's not silly, but it's what happened. Gary moved from England, and he needed some tools. And one day we were building this deck on our house, and he had me hanging over like the second story with these giant pieces of wood to build this deck. And I thought, I cannot, I'm too small. I'm going to fall. I can't do this. So we need help. We need reinforcements. So the first person I thought of was Steven. I called Steven up. I'm like, can you come over and help Gary with this construction project? And the two of them just started working together. And afterwards, Gary said to me, like, Steven's really easy to work with. And then Steven said to me on a separate occasion, wow, Gary's really smart. Like I would work with him any day. So both of them came to me on separate, after this event happened and really spoke nicely of the other. So again, we just still took it slow, and over the years it has evolved because we have the same families. We have good things that happen and deaths that happen and celebrations. So and friends, we have mutual friends. So there's the crossover that the more Gary and Stephen have crossed over because of mutual friends and family events, the more they've gotten to know each other, and the better the relationship has gotten. But again, it wasn't like we didn't force anything; it happened very naturally.
Probably watching a Duke basketball game was probably when it all happened in a positive way. I'm teasing about that. Gary, but I gotta say, Gary's probably a better man than me, at least in many respects, but at least in this one, and that is, I'm trying to think, I'm gonna ask Gary his feeling on this. I've never been divorced, and but I can only imagine if I had gotten divorced and my wife, then ex-wife, said, I'm going to call so and so, or actually I get remarried and then she's going to call so and so, her ex-husband, or whatever, and say, hey, would you come help Bobby O out on something? I don't think I think Bobby O would have been a Wanda. And by the way, for folks who don't know, Wanda is a person who used to be Michelle's outer self. It's a joke, who had a little bit of emotion or rage or whatever, but that's all done. But I don't think I would have taken very well to have a call the reverse of what you made to Stephen. Gary, why were you so comfortable, or were you comfortable with Michele calling Stephen for help on that project? Did it bother you at all?
No, it didn't. It was quite relaxing because Stephen can lift more than Michelle and things like that. So,
Thanks, man.
and he knows which way to hold a hammer, so screwdrivers. So I was quite comfortable being friendly to people. So
Well, Michele, you now have a verbal affidavit from Bobby O that definitely, you knew it already, but Gary is a better man than Bobby O because he took that very, very, very well. Stephen, what was your reaction to getting a phone call from Michele saying, hey, we have this beautiful new house, or house we have in the Hamptons, and we need help? By this point in time, were you comfortable enough to receive the phone call that you got from Michele?
Absolutely. Um, Now back to your thing that you said you'd never be as accepting. You really don't know until you've been there,
Okay.
you know. So I can't. When we got back together, everything was good. I I never lost respect for Michelle. I didn't. I look at her. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was my friend, and that's how you look at it. That's how
And I'm
people
going
are
to
able to
say,
move forward.
we get to rewrite the script, and that's where people, it's like societal expectations. Oh, you're supposed to, even if you go to a societal expectation, fathers should do this, mothers should do this. We have all these do's and don'ts, which I don't know where this book is that says people should do this or should do that. So realizing that, to me, I always say, what's the best way through this for everybody involved? Not just, it's like, it's not about, it's a win-win. Stephen Covey talks about the win-win. Even in the divorce, when we were talking about assets, it's like, I don't want this to be a win-lose. I want this to be a win-win because, we both in this, we built this marriage together. So why should one come out better than the other? Let's figure out a way for it to be, you know, acceptable. Again, it wasn't fun to do these kind of things, and so many years have
Mhm.
passed now, it's much easier to talk about it. But anybody going through a divorce right now, it's, at the end of the day, what's the outcome you want? Do you have family members? Do you have children together? Those kids have to see you with your ex for the rest of their lives. That you're going to go to their weddings and their christenings and whatever, their birthday parties of their children. And to me, I just never wanted to see Stephen on the street and have to duck or have to feel uncomfortable. And I think Stephen felt the same way. And then Gary also. So again, there's a saying, you can't pick a fight with a conscious person. And transcending means you transcend the situation. It's Stephen and I had a lot of things we didn't agree on, and Gary and I have a lot of things we don't agree on. but we all agree that we want to have a relationship. So when you get to that point in any relationship, can you transcend? Again, transcend means rise above, see both people's point of view, so that you can have something better than this fighting and the stuff we see played out on TV dramas every night.
Gee, it's interesting, Gary and Stephen, because there's nothing that Michele and I don't agree upon. We agree upon everything together. So, but I do want to say a couple of things. I'm kidding about that. Michele, you probably could tell when we did our prep this past Saturday, it was going to be a 15-minute prep. It lasted over an hour. I was very touched to hear, I couldn't tell you, I wouldn't tell you the exact comments that were made because it was a confidential discussion, but there were times from each of the three of you where one of you said something to the other that really touched me in terms of how it was more proof that you guys get along as a triangle in a positive way than just saying it, and just hearing the way the three of you talked and communicated, Gary to Stephen, Stephen to Gary, and Michele both ways. I was very touched that A, you would share that with me, B, that you felt that way, and C, I knew this would be one of my toughest shows to do because I expected at least 2 objections from Michele. I only got 1 so far, but it was very touching to see how you guys developed it. But what I want to do is a transition a little bit away from this topic, and we'll come back to it, because what Michele said a few moments ago was we all have to write our own outcomes, and that happens to be the name of her podcast. I'd like to have you talk a little bit about your podcast, now going to year 2, about the podcast Write Your Own Outcome. So I'm giving you this chance, Michele, with the books. I got the books for you, got the podcast for you, and maybe someday you can meet my $10,000 fee to be on your podcast. We'll see. Tell me a little bit about what is the podcast, what's the theme of Write Your Own Outcome?
Yeah, the theme is to really help people know that, again, life is going to serve you up things you don't like. You are going to, you get divorced, there's illness, there's sickness, there's accidents, there's all these things, job loss. Lots of things happen in our lives that we don't plan. And my goal is to help people know that even though you can't plan everything in your life, you could choose how you talk about it and the outcome you write. So I use the example of my dad's passing away. Some people, I could say that's the most devastating thing in my life, or I could say he had a beautiful 83 years on this planet, and he's now my chief executive angel, and he's helping me in ways he never did before. The story you tell yourself is very important. I do want to talk really quickly about this season, because last season I had lots of different guests, and we just all talked about writing new outcomes, whether it was with AI or with relationships or with leadership. This season, I'm doing something very different. I'm walking the edge between what I call business and spirituality. And spirituality, not in something religious, but in consciousness. When someone is conscious, they take responsibility for their actions. And I feel we need more consciousness in our leadership. We have a lot of information in the world, and just because someone's intelligent, just because they're rich, just because they're powerful, does not make them conscious. So I really want to talk to people so that they understand how they can remain conscious in a very unconscious world. So if this is intriguing you, tune in to Write Your Outcome, and I'll leave it at that, Fabio.
Well, every time you speak, it gives me 4 more thoughts of things I want to talk to you about. And I don't want to leave the gentleman out, but I just want to continue this. You and I have talked hundreds, many, many, many times, countless times on the phone, and we do discuss politics. We never discuss politics on my shows for choice. We don't want to do that, but something that you and I have talked a lot about. Everyone knows that I am so down on President Trump, and sometimes you and I will talk at length, Michele, on the phone about how one goes about. I can't impeach President Trump, but there are some things that I can do to make either be more reactive in a way that's positive, or to make myself not be as concerned. And we've talked about that, and you said one time, you said to me several months ago, why don't you do what you think is the best thing that you can do to get your points across? And so I do. If you read my Facebook posts, I write things periodically. I say some things on my show, But I also got involved in going to things like No King's Rally, which were the rallies to say we don't have a king and that kind of thing. And so that, Michele, was an apolitical way, what your recommendation was to do things that are meaningful to you to express your discontent, but it wasn't always about us talking about politics. And so you'd say to me, well, what outcome are you trying to achieve? And so I'd go to rallies, and I've spoken at many. I spoke at Southbury Justice, which is an organization that's met for 300 and some odd Sundays, every Sunday, rain, sleet, or snow. I do those kinds of things, and sometimes you'll send me congratulatory things. So talk to me a little bit about how addressing those kind of political things that are concerned to all of us, I know you have many concerns as well, they don't always speak about, how does choosing your own outcome help you maybe be more efficient emotionally and also getting a better result?
Yeah, so just even with the three of us, like with Steve and Gary and I, it's in a relationship, I only control me. I don't control Steven and I don't control Gary. So I have to focus on what I control. So, I can control what I say to Gary, I can control what I say to Steven, but at the end of the day, they are responsible. With politics, when we were talking one day, I think the quote that I love is, what you want to do for many, do for one, because sometimes we can't change the entire world and we can't help every single person that needs help, but I can help one person. So the biggest thing that's helped me through COVID, through politics, through any global events are, I don't give my energy to things I don't control, because that's just a recipe for anxiety, for disaster. But I do control, if I'm nice to people, I do control how I show up, how I treat people. I do control whether I vote or not. I do control, so again, for me, it's about energy and where I put my focus. And I think, like literally what Gary, Steve, and I did was we focused on the outcome we wanted. And what happens is a lot of times most people are focusing on what they don't want. And the law of focus says whatever you focus on, you get more of. What you resist persists. So if I want more peace in the world, I have to focus on being peaceful inside, not just with the planet, but with my former husband, with my current husband, with you. Peace starts within, because that's what I'm emanating. So this is a really big topic, and it goes back to everything we're talking about today. So whether it's politics or divorce, you can't expect people to be peaceful if you're not peaceful inside.
I'm going to go to you, please, Stephen. Do you have any comments about what just been talking about, anything you want to say about what we've just said? Because I think each of you, Gary and Stephen, will have some thoughts perhaps on the concept that we're talking about maximizing yourself and doing things that are your own outcome versus someone else's outcome. Stephen, any comments you have about that?
Yeah, so my thing is, I'm finding out that these podcasts get out. So, I've had a couple of family members that have contacted me. I just want them to know, this is speaking to my family. I love you all. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. We'll get over it. So I just want you guys to all know that. So no matter what's happening now, in the now, it'll pass. And my outcome for that is that we'll all be okay.
Why did you feel the need to say that to your family before you made your comment? Why did you feel the need to say that to your family? It's a very wonderful thought, but why did you need to say that? And by the way, any question I ask, you do not. What's the answer, Michele? You don't have to answer the questions, right? So you don't have to answer. Why did you feel the need to say that?
Because it's just one of those things. Not all of us. My family's spread out all over the country, and for whatever reason, like I said, we love each other, but we just haven't spoken the way that we have, that we should. And I just want them to all know, listen, I'm here, I'm fine. I got some stuff going on. You guys have things going on. Let's just all get along in the end. So.
This is a legitimate clap. Before I go to Gary, I've done several shows on Israel. I'm Jewish, and I had a guest 3 or 4 times who's a Jewish attorney I've known who moved to Israel and was there when the October 7th tragedy occurred, and was there when bombings occurred. She couldn't get back to Israel because of the Iran war at some points in time. And she and I have had some pretty firm discussions on the air. because I believe that what's going on in Israel is very bad for Jews. And she believes that we have to support Israel sort of no matter what. We both have different perspectives, but to Michelle's point, we're writing our own outcome. And anti-Semitism has been a problem in the world for thousands of years. And what's going on in Israel is not a good thing. And so I don't think it's a problem for me to, as a Jew, who bought bar mitzvah bonds, when we were all bar mitzvah age years ago, we had to contribute some of our bar mitzvah money. We had to. My father said, you'll do it, and you did it. And you bought Israeli bonds, knowing you may not get paid. I got mine back. But the point was, I'm devoted to Israel. I'm devoted to Judaism. But we can have a different approach, that lady and me, and still be close friends because we're writing our own outcome. And I think that's sort of, again, what Michele is talking about and what you're talking about, Stephen, as well. Agreed?
Absolutely.
And Gary, now how about you? Do you have any comments? You don't have to, any comments on what we're talking about from your perspective?
Which questions is?
Well, anything about the fact that if things are happening, let's suppose you're not happy with the way the British Crown has handled certain things in the last 3 or 4 years, let's say hypothetically. I don't know if you are or you aren't. But there might be difference of opinions about how you feel about it. Do you feel it's appropriate for you to have your own personal thoughts and feelings? And if that makes you feel good, then it's good for you. Did I say that right, Michele? Is that a good way to add? I don't want to get objected.
I'm going to let Gary answer.
Oh, Michele, she deferred. Okay. I didn't want an answer, Michele. I just want to make sure if I said it clearly enough.
So, what's going on in England is much the same as what's going on here. I have probably less control of what I can do in England than what I can do here. My thoughts of what I can do here are probably the same as what I could do in England, and just protest, like you say. But we do have a kingdom there, so.
And what you're saying is exactly, if I understand it, is consistent with what each of us is saying, but in a different way. We're all saying something differently, but it's all, at least this group, is the same, where you have to write your own outcome and do your own thing. Michele, I want to go back to your book, if I don't mind, because I think we've done a lot with the other issue, because I am going to ask you a little bit later for each of you to give advice to married couples who remarry, to do things well you did, but I want to get into some of the thoughts that are useful and important as well. I do follow your book. These yellow things are not just put here for show, Michele.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Because when I speak, sometimes I'll pull out quotes and lines. I'm going to ask each of us, and I'll answer too, what does each of us do? If there's one thing you can think of, and just sort of subconsciously, what do you do on a relatively daily, weekly, whatever kind of regular basis to make happiness be a habit and to energize your happiness? So what do you do? And here's the book I have right here. And next time I'm going to put blue stickies here so you'll know it's new stuff. But I'm going to ask you, Michele, to start, please. Tell me something, anything you want to talk about that you do to make happiness a habit. And I can think of 20 things you're going to say. I'm not sure which one you're going to say. And how you energize your happiness. Michele, take it away. Take all the time you want.
Thank you. Just with happiness as a habit, my mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional habits are really important to me. If you do something at least 3 times a week, it's considered a habit. The one habit I think most people can benefit from that, we've heard from all the, you how much food to eat, and you need to exercise and get sleep, and all those things. But it's the mental habits, it's the thinking habits. So the way you think is a habit, and when you can, optimists handle challenges different than pessimists. So an optimist is able to isolate something bad that happens in their life and not let it affect all the other areas. So that's the best advice I give people. If something negative is happening in your life, whether it be an illness, a divorce, a loss of a job, loss of a loved one, keep working out, keep eating right, keep doing your sleep, and then you'll be able to recover quicker. And to energize your happiness, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. Stop giving your attention and energy to things you don't control. You have a lot of agency and a lot of power, but we weaken it when we spend all day talking about what we don't want. So, what are you doing about it? What's an action you could take that's going to give you something you want versus something you don't want? And it will also make you feel better in the end.
Boy, that could be the name of a third book. We could call it the
I
Bobby
already
O.
have the name for the third book, yes.
Is the name of the third book Bobby O and Michele, Happiness is Forever? Is that what it's going to be? Don't tell us what.
I can't tell, I can't divulge.
And I can't, and you can't do that title until I give you my copyright authorization. Stephen,
That's funny.
what do you do?
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to ask you if you've read her books, because I'm sure you guys have outlined it, or at least gotten the cliff
It's got my
notes.
name in it. Of course I've read it.
And only the old people know what cliff notes are, right? We only know it. That's when you would read a book in high school and get the cliff notes to explain to you why Cleopatra said what she said. But anyway, Stephen, tell me your response to that question about what you do to make happiness a habit and also energizing your happiness.
Wake up every morning, with a smile on my face. I always have a positive attitude every morning. No matter what's going on in my life, I will get up, learn something new, go out and take pictures, go for a hike, because nature, one, is always going to throw you something new. And right now, I try to capture that, and I don't let anything negative. I stay away from negative people, and that keeps me going. So.
You mentioned your family before. Do you sometimes, when you get a phone call from whatever relative it might be, do you kind of try to instill something to make them feel, like the comment you made 5 minutes ago? Do you try to instill those kind of comments to say, hey, this is not so great that happened, but how about this? How about you have this, or something like that? Do you ever try to do that with your family?
I do. And one thing I do mostly, I do answer. If somebody calls, I answer. And for the most part. And I do try to let them know, listen, I'm in a good space right now. You fix yourself or whatever you're doing, and then we can get back together. But I'm not going to get caught up in any drama whatsoever, because you can't help.
Gary,
So,
is there something that you do as part of happiness being a habit for you, that's routine things you do that make you feel good and make you feel better?
Yeah, I mean, in the morning we'll try and sit down and have a coffee and just relax and just reflect on what you've got going on today, and try and be positive about everything's going to go right. Um, and it normally does. Sometimes you get cars breaking down and things, which hamper what you're going to think of the day. So, but just concentrating on um, good things and not bad things.
We
And
know
try not to look at the stock market.
the four men in this show, or the three men in this show, we're old, so therefore just waking up in the morning is a good thing. But with the young lady who's only 29 or 30, it's more than that. But that's true. Every day is a blessing because you don't know when things are going to happen. I said I would give you mine, and I will say that I think happiness as a habit is a changing thing. If things don't change in your life, then you're not moving forward. So what I wrote down as my happiness thing, Michele maybe she would have guessed it or not. I now have a 4-year-old grandson and a 15 or 16-month-old grandson, and we could buy my 4-year-old grandson a $3 truck at Stop and Shop or a $200 truck at the fancy toy store. It doesn't matter. Just giving a gift is important to him, and the smile that you get on his face, and the second one is getting to that stage, makes a big difference. And so that is something, Michele, we've never talked about before. That's a newer happiness as a habit. I'm not going to get into Duke without losing to the UConn game. If I could have played that game over again and had that ball not deflected, I feel better. But those of us who are Knicks fans, and I'm really not a pro basketball fan, have a lot to look forward to tonight. So that's what I'm pointing out, is that things can change in what make you really happy over time, but those are things that are important. We have 5 minutes left. I want to have each of you now tell us to wrap up. And this has been a very hard show to do, but a lovely show to do. And I really appreciate what we're doing. It's like an oxymoron, right? I'd like each of you to tell me if you had 1 or 2 pieces of advice for a newly married couple who had a difficult divorce, what might you say to them to try to make sure that they could be in the place you all are? I'll start with Stephen this time.
Listen to each other. If one of you are doing something that the other one doesn't agree on, fix it. Don't let outside influences break up your home. Simple as that. Listen to yourself. Like listen to yourself, because you'll know what's right. And yeah, don't just make sure that you communicate. It's something that I wasn't always really good at, but you know what? I learned. Now I think I can pretty much talk to anybody.
The fact that you learned is a very important thing. And by the way, before I go to Michele, you and I have talked about the role fate plays in our life many times on the phone. I want to tell you a fatalistic story that happened today. Michele told a story on her podcast about the canoe. And that's the very second divorce case I ever had. Everything was resolved, except at the end, someone raised the canoe that they wanted to fight for and argue for. And it wasn't about the canoe. It was about that last argument. Well, today, I had a routine doctor report. Every 6 months, I have a doctor's report that's routine. And who do I bump into? That lawyer. That lawyer who said, Bob, I haven't seen you in years. Let's go get a drink. For me, a drink is Diet Dr. Pepper. But I thought of you, Michele, this morning saying, Michele did that to me. She had us, it was Michele. So it's part of happiness being a habit where I rely on you, but isn't that an amazingly fatalistic thing? I hadn't seen him for years.
What you focus on comes to you, so people don't realize how
Absolutely.
important that is. Yeah.
Your advice, please, Michele.
My advice is anger is just a mask for pain. Anytime someone's being ornery or angry or a bully or any of those things, it's really just an acceptable form of in our society. And what's under the anger is always pain and hurt and disappointment. So I think when people get to court and they're fighting and they're acting all tough and you're like, I'm going to get you, it's all BS. You know, it's really just a hurt heart. We all have, our hearts are tender, and you know, we don't like to admit that.
Lead with your heart. Lead with your
See
heart.
each other's hearts. Yeah.
Gary, you get the last. If you have any comment you want to make, advice in the last 30 seconds, do you have any advice you want to give?
Advice. Never sleep on an argument. That's my advice.
That's a good point. And by the way, you guys have been wonderful to me. And I would say to you, before I start this whole thing, before our prep show, I said, Michele's the glue. And Michele, you are the glue, but you know what? You got some pretty good piece of plywood around you. I want to thank you all for letting me do my thing, doing the Bobby O Show, and I hope no one's mad at me. And I want to get together the 4 of us in a rectangle. You name the time and the place. And Michele, you'll of course have your 14th visit coming up down the road. And Gary and Steve will do one without her. This has been the Bobby O, Bob Potzer saying thank you, board, and I really love you all. Thank you very much.